Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com, and today we are talking engine oils, specifications, and approvals. All right, so as you guys can obviously see, I have a guest in studio today. This is Stefan from Liquimoly. You flew here from Germany special to be with me today and to talk to everybody about a handful of things, but in this show, we are talking about engine oils. We're gonna talk about some things that are on the labels and why it's important and what you really need to know, like the important stuff about engine oil. There's a ton of oils. You walk into the part store and there's 10 million different bottles like this and little ones and additives and all that other kind of stuff. And we're gonna break some of that down to a very simple way that you can make 100% sure you're using the right stuff for your car. So, Stefan, let's start off by talking about the thing I think everybody kind of knows a bit about on an engine oil, and that's the W, the 5W40, 10W30. What are we dealing with when we look at that number?
When you're talking about the number 530, 540, we're just talking about the viscosity of the oil. It's not a performance grade, not a performance classification. It's just the viscosity when the oil is cold. And the second number, the 30, the 40, the 50, the 60 is when the oil has operating temperature. So that number just gives you an idea how thick or how thin this liquid is at definite motor oil temperatures.
Okay.
Again, it's not a performance grade.
So the W doesn't stand for weight.
It stays for winter.
Winter, right.
Yes.
So the first number that we're looking at is the way the oil flows when it's cold.
Exactly.
And then the second number is the way it flows when it's warm.
The higher the numbers are, the thicker is the oil at that definite oil temperature. So I'll give you an example. The 5 is there for the cold temperature flow viscosity, definite at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The higher the number, the thicker is the oil. That means a zero weight oil is much thinner at that definite temperature comparing to a 10 or 15 weight oil. When the engine has reached its operating temperature, we can forget about the first number. We talk about the second number. It's definite at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. The lower the number, the thinner is the oil, the faster it flows.
Right, so when the engine is cold, we want this oil to be able to flow faster to get to all the important parts, the turbocharger, up to the valve train. But when it's warm, we don't want it so thin that it's like we dumped I had a bottle of water a second ago. We dumped a bottle of water in it and have basically no lubricating properties in our engine oil.
Today's engines are designed to run with ultra low performance motor oils because of fuel efficiency. We need to produce today 0-weight oils or 0-weight 30 oils and not longer 2050s like we did in the 70s, 80s or 90s.
Yeah, 2050 today would be like pouring sludge directly, I think, into the
like
engine.
this, yes.
So obviously, you take a 2-liter turbo like my wife's Tiguan and pour a 2050 weight. It's probably not going to be very happy, or at least it won't be very happy for very long. I want to say the spec on that is 530 or 540, depending on region.
In general, modern engines where the tolerances between the moving parts are very, very small, we need focus on the low temperature viscosity. So the days to use a 1040, 1030, these days are gone. Today we need to have a low temperature viscosity, like a 0-weight or 5-weight, in order that the lubrication reaches all loop points in a very fast way. That means the turbocharger needs fastest lubrication. It has nothing to do with the oil pressure. It means just how fast or how slow reaches the oil, these loop points after the cold start in the morning.
That's why, if we were to put a really thick oil in our car, one of the things, especially on a timing chain driven engine, we're trying to avoid is that first hit of the key and your engine first fires up and you get that clack, 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 clack. Yeah, that's bad, right? We don't want that. It's bad on the timing chain. It's bad on the engine. Your engine's not technically properly timed at that point. So we don't want to create any more wear on our engine by having the wrong engine oil.
Wrong viscosity.
Wrong viscosity, and all the rest of it is important too, which we're actually going to talk about in a minute. I'd posted that you were coming today and everybody's super excited, and someone had a great question, and it's a question that I don't get a lot, but I know is out there a ton, and that's the differences in engine oil. We have all these words on oil bottles. Some say conventional, some just say oil, like when you go to the gas station, it just says oil. You have that, you have synthetic blend, you have high mileage, you have fully synthetic. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between synthetic, fully synthetic, and a synthetic blend. To me, and I know it's not this, but I almost had this image of someone just like adding some conventional to some synthetic oil, and that's how they make their blend. But it's not that really, but it kind of is that.
It's a kind of, yes. You know, synthetic blends, it's primarily a mixture of a conventional motor oil and a fully synthetic motor oils. These oils have been very popular in the 80s and 90s. Just add a shot of a fully synthetic motor oil into a conventional blend to boost the performance of the conventional oil. Today we're talking about a fully synthetic motor oils, which have much better properties than the synthetic blend. So the synthetic blend is more or less, it's outdated.
So when it comes to synthetic and conventional, you were telling me that they're actually grouped in, oddly enough, groups. Groups 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tell me a little bit more about that.
The API, American Petroleum Institute, is classifying this base oils into, you're right, 4 different groups. Group 1 and 2 are more or less the conventional oils. Group 3 and 4 are the synthetic oils. This is the definition by API.
So when it comes to then the blend, it can really be any combination of conventional versus synthetic. You had mentioned pouring a shot of synthetic oil in conventional oil. Once you do that, you've went from a conventional oil to a blend, or the other way, from a synthetic oil to a blend. Let's go a little deeper into the group 3 and the group 4.
Group 4 means it's based on polyalpha olefins, which is nothing else than raw petrol. Today's modern engine oils are primarily or nearly all based on the group 3. That means hydrocrack technology. It's a conventional mineral-based oil treated by man that makes it a fully synthetic oil. Using a group 3 base oil is the only chance to get an officially OEM approval from one of the car manufacturers for the latest approval. So also possible today use a group 3 with a shot of a group of 4. So mix these 2 group synthetics together. But again, today group 3 is the standard for making fully synthetic oils.
So when you see, especially here in the US, when you see a bottle of oil that says fully synthetic, you are talking about a group 3 oil or a group 3 mixed with some group 4 oil. What though, when you get into the group 3 and group 4, what's the difference? Because I'm thinking, okay, it's group 4, it's better just because it's 4, not 3. But what makes it, what if I had 2 bottles, a group 3 and a group 4 bottle, what would actually be the difference of the product?
The performance, the strength, you just have to look on the OEM specifications, on the OEM approvals. As soon as you see the latest OEM specifications, approvals on it, it has to be a group 3 based oil. So the group 3, the synthetic technology, is today has a better performance than the group 4.
It's basically an oil that's more available, there's more of it. So one that drives the cost down a little bit.
Exactly.
And it becomes sort of the standard for engine oil.
Exactly. It is already the standard for engine oil. For modern engines, modern motor oils, yes.
There's a lot more information on the labels of these bottles. Let's talk about it. We got specs and we got approvals, which I learned are 2 very different things. Let's talk about the approvals a bit first. Approvals are going to be basically an OEM, a manufacturer, you submit your product to the OEM, they send you a letter and they say, yep, you're good. We give you the thumbs up. You are now an officially approved oil for our engines.
Exactly. OEM approval means that oil has the right spare part number that fits exactly in that engine. It's like when you're having a spark plug. Maybe another spark plug also works, but how long and how good? So if you have an oil with an OEM approval, exactly that number means that oil is especially proven and designed for working in that engine.
Right. So they've decided that the base oil, all the detergent packages, all the additives are exactly what the car, what the engine, what it requires for optimum performance.
The minimum. An approved oil meets at minimum the requirements by the car manufacturer, and that is proven by an approval letter.
And so there's basically a window that it has to be in. So it has to have this much of this and this much of that. And, we can go way deep in the woods on it. But essentially the mixture of all of the things that go into an engine oil are correct for that manufacturer. But they can't actually be better than that. It's just they've at least hit that kind of first tier of what Volkswagen or Audi or BMW or whoever we're talking about has said their engines require for oil.
Exactly, and this is guaranteed by the approval letters. So you as a customer or as a car driver, be sure grabbing an oil which is officially approved, you get at minimum the requested quality, the right spare part number. As yes, you're right, there is a little bit gap on top of it where the oil manufacturers can, let's say, play a little around to improve the performance of the oil.
So all that's great, and of course, I want to use what the manufacturer says is the right approved oil. But there's something else. There's specifications. So what's the difference then between an approved oil by we'll just say Volkswagen, an approved oil by Volkswagen versus an oil that meets a specification that Volkswagen says it should have?
All the OEM approvals like Volkswagen 504, 547, they are based on a specification, which is a general specification. In Europe, we're talking about the ACEA, which is the Manufacturers Association of the European car manufacturers. They give the basics. And on top of it, the car manufacturers making their own in-house requirements. That is the spare part number, the OEM approval number. So that's the difference between a specification and an approval number.
So an oil company can make a product that meets the specification, but it doesn't get the approval.
Exactly.
Now, that doesn't mean, though, that the product's bad. It may actually have more of a certain additive or a certain detergent than the OEM requires. It just means that the company didn't go through the process to get that stamp from the manufacturer and say, yep, you're good. I picture it being a thumbs up stamp. We can have an oil that meets the spec but doesn't have the approval. We can have an oil that has a spec on it. Basically what I'm asking is, when I as a customer go to that big aisle that I was talking about before and look at all the stuff, what do I need to look at? What's the first thing I need to pay attention to when I'm trying to choose an engine oil?
The first thing you should do is check your owner's manual. What does the manufacturer say is the given spec? This one you should know. And with that knowledge, you go into the shop and then you select the oil. You can normally customize the viscosity a little bit, depending on the technical conditions, on the operating conditions of the car. But you always have to grab an oil that is at minimum meets or exceeds or is approved for that given spec that is written in your owner's manual.
Okay, so I'm going to go to my book, I'm going to look at it, and it's going to say something like, this engine requires 504, or if I have a diesel with a diesel particulate filter, it's going to say 50700, and I have to find an oil that meets that spec or exceeds that spec first, or is approved, which would be the best case scenarios when it's approved.
Yes.
So I need to find that first. Then I can worry about, am I going to buy a 5W30, a 5W40, which I think for the most part isn't going to be that big of a deal. The key, though, the most important part is to get the oil that meets the specification that the manufacturer recommends, which is, of course, going to be what your owner's manual says.
Exactly. And we mentioned already, viscosity is only the viscosity and not a performance grade. So first check the spec and then select the right viscosity for your car and your operating conditions.
So it actually kind of popped another question in my head, and I think I know the answer, but I want to see if I'm right or wrong. What is even the difference then? If I have a 50400 or a 50501, which was kind of the big deal back in like 04, 05, when the pump deuce came out, what's the difference between all these oils? I mean, there's it feels like to me anyway, 1,000 different numbers on these bottles, and they can be really intimidating. Of course, I want to get what the book says, but what are some of the differences between the 507, 504?
It's like using a different recipe when you go to the kitchen and making a cake. You can make an apple pie in that way and that way, and both is in the end an apple pie. For example, 504 means 504, 547 means in Central Europe we have this extended oil drain intervals, and this is the so-called long night 3 approval. That means in Central Europe it can go up to 30,000 miles, 24 months with such an approved oil with that performance. 50501, for example, is a special additive combination for the pump-reducer engines which make a lot of pressure. So a special additive formulation. 502, for example, means gasoline standard drain interval and diesel's non-DPF.
Right.
So that's behind that number. It's like it's like a game. You have to know the number and then know what is behind the numbers.
I actually like how you put that. It's a recipe. So we're taking a base product and we're adding a dash of this, a dash of that, some of this package, some of this lubrication improver, some of this detergent, and what that has and how much of each of those basically says what the number is going to be.
Exactly.
Or the number dictates, probably the other way, the number dictates how much of each of these things is going to be.
Must be in there minimum to meet the requirements of the manufacturers, yes.
Let's kind of wrap it up with what, to me anyway, is going to be the most important thing that everybody needs to know is, why do I have to have the right oil? Why can't I just go and get oil? I like to use the oil at the gas station example. Why can't I just go get oil and put that in my car and be okay?
There's one thing you have to see. The engine technology changed the past 15, 20 years in a dramatically way. Former times, let's say before the year 2000, the motor oil was more or less only there for lubricate the motor. That's it. Today we have many, many different exhaust gas treatment systems following the engine, and all they need an efficient and clean burning process. Right. So because every design of the exhaust gas system is different and every design of the engine is different, we need the right spare part number in order to let the engine with a longest durability as possible and to protect or make sure the exhaust gas treatment system work as efficient as possible.
Right, and we also have things like timing chain engines that, you know, we had long ago, but now they're highly controlled. We have variators that changed cam timing, so we need to make sure that we have not only the right weight oil, 5W40, but we have to have the right mix, that right recipe of detergent, of lubrication improving components, and all the other magical mystery stuff that goes into making a bottle of this kind of stuff that is way, 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 way over my head. The all really just boils down to follow what the manufacturer recommends. That will be the bare minimum of what your vehicle requires to run as good as possible when it comes to cooling and lubricating the engine and making sure things like cam variators and timing chains are happy.
Exactly, that's it.
All right, guys, we are going to wrap it up there. Stefan, thank you so much for coming and talking to everybody about motor oil or engine oil, whatever you prefer. If you like this video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. You can also subscribe right here on YouTube. Don't forget to ding that little notification bell, or over at the blog at humblemechanic.com. If you want exclusive content from me, as well as discounts to a ton of places and VW Audi training manuals, check out the crew membership program. There's a link down in the description. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course Snapchat. I'll link up to Liquimoly if you want to learn more about them. These are you guys are like the big players in the German car world. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Again, Stefan, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.